Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a nice lunch break. I'm very happy to introduce now Sara Garavelli as chair of session number 3. Sara is also director of the EOSC Association and working for the CSC IT Center for Science. She will chair the session on the EOSC added value for thematic communities. How can RI and end users benefit from EOSC? Sara, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Good afternoon, and thanks for this invitation, especially to you, Miriam, and for this. As you said already, today I have the pleasure to chair this session that is focusing on discussing the added value of EOSC for the thematic communities, the research infrastructures, but also the regions. In particular, we will reflect on the EOSC implementation vision and current status, and the role and contributions of the research infrastructures. We will also have in this session 3 concrete use cases through which we will try to better understand what are the tangible benefits that EOSC can bring to the research infrastructures. We will take questions at the end of the session like we did this morning. So please use the Q&A feature of Zoom to post your questions during the presentations, if you have any. And now I think I would like to invite the first speaker of this session, Yannis Ioannidis from University of Athens and Athena Research Center. Yannis is also the EOSC Future coordinator, and I remind for those not familiar with EOSC Future that EOSC Future is the flagship implementation project for EOSC. Yannis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sara. It's a pleasure to be here and be starting the discussion on how EOSC can benefit users. Let me share my presentation to you. Here we are. Can you see it in full screen?
Yes, perfect.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. So I will give you, EOSC services for the users and what we envision the final result to be and what we're doing in EOSC Future. And I kind of connect the EOSC and ESFRI both because I'm involved and I'm coordinating EOSC Future, but also I've been for a few years an ESFRI executive board member. And this presentation, I want to thank Fotis Karagiannis, Paolo Manghi, and Natalia Manola, who provided many of the slides or the resources for the slides. So what is the EOSC vision? The way we envision EOSC is that eventually users will have a personalized dashboard and they will be entering there and find their research environment in cyberspace. It will integrate all services, all data, all research products that they need to take into account for the research problem. And they can be thematic, very particular one, vertical, and possibly also generic, networking, computation, and so on and so forth, and data services. And they shouldn't care where these are coming from. Are they from infrastructures or other resources at the European level, regional, national? The researcher doesn't care about that, and this is what EOSC will be providing. They will be logging in with a universal AAI, Authentication Authorization Infrastructure. I'm trying not to use the acronym, and see their environment. And then they should be looking for all they require. And if they don't find what they need, or if they're new in something, EOSC will be intelligent enough to be able to find for them with using advanced machine learning, artificial intelligence techniques, and so on, and point to services that they may get. And the system will be a place where all these services, all these research projects, there will be metrics around them, including the provenance and where they're coming from, people, what is the original source, as in so to speak, if you may excuse it, they're marketplaces, modern marketplaces. This will be a research product marketplaces. And this will be a portal. EOSC will be an amazing portal, but it will not be the one portal for everyone. It won't be the unique portal, but also it will not be the same portal for everyone. Each one will be adapted to every user. Is this wishful thinking? We think not. I mean, the trip is long, the path to it is long, but we have started on. What is currently happening? We have a whole bunch of existing amazing infrastructures, research infrastructures, especially the pan-European ESFRI infrastructures with domain-specific services, which nevertheless are forced to come up with generic services as well at the bottom layers, and also e-infrastructures that offer horizontal services for everyone. And the two together, although separate, they cover the entire research stack, all the needs: computing, storage, data management, particular models, and so on and so, publishing, discoveries, and anything that someone needs, you can find it spread around. The thing is that these infrastructures are independent, separately developed, and in order to get to where you want as a researcher, it's a process that is multi-stop, a lot of manual work for users. And if we use presentation earlier this morning, was amazingly accurate for the effort that a researcher can do currently to do their work. Great work. EOSC is there to change it. And data is the linchpin for this. Data is at the center of this entire process of bringing everything together. And of course, is a main element for open science. What are the requirements? I mentioned the word glue. Bring everything, all the infrastructures that exist under a common understanding with standards and exchange mechanisms, so that although each one will retain their independence, there will be part that will come, be glued together, and offer a uniform view to the researcher. Best practices that come from different sources, from different origins, to have fair data and open data. And in general, even if you're not fair, to have enough mechanisms to come up with value out of this. And of course, policies, business models, quality standards, and so on. And all of this to get rid of the process that Anne presented this morning, but have the whole thing be seamless. When you log in and you are in the EGI notebook, I saw the question in the Q&A part, to automatically go to OpenAIRE and bring the data out. This was a question. So not to have to do it manually and connect it and send it and so on and so forth. That's the goal. That's the requirement. And a federation and interoperability among the parts of the federation. So the destination for EOSC is a system of systems. The systems will retain their individuality, but it will come together to create a new system, and a meta system, if you want. And this is a picture. This is an eye test, and for everyone, but it's indicative of the complexity of what we're trying to do. And it has four main pieces: EOS Core, which bring all together for seamless access, the lowest level, the infrastructure parts coming together. EOS Exchange, which is the generic, specific, community-specific services that are value-added on top of the infrastructures that still are they have value for interoperation, for sharing among them. And of course, there are things that are outside of EOS that are specific to a particular community, particular cluster, a particular region, but lots of what each one of these needs is part of EOS and comes together. Interoperability framework, how everything is connected together, lots of generic services there, and supporting activities, which often are very important, as important, if not more, than the technological glue. How do the people come together? How do the processes come together? How do the models coming together? And if I want to separate the two, electronic infrastructures work on the bottom layer as expected. The ESFRI research infrastructures work on the top layer. And of course, all of what the researchers who will eventually be talking to research infrastructures, ESFRI or others, are based on what the infrastructures are providing, plus the common left and right services that are developed by both. So what is EOSC Future? As Sarah said, yeah, this is a flagship effort to build EOSC. In a nutshell, well, that's the consortium, lots of partners. And the key element of this is that the ESFRI research infrastructures and the electronic infrastructures are coming together in full power, in full strength for the first time. And this was much easier said than done, but now it is happening in EOSC Future. And this is as an important achievement, if you want, as building the EOSC itself. What are the main resources? I mean, we talk about everything, this and that, and will come together. In my mind, there are four major pillars that are coming together. We said data is in the center. What does this mean? It means, first of all, computational services, all of them commonly described and provided. Two, data services, data sources that are provided, again, with common standards and interoperation strength, always being fair. That's a target. Now, all of these are used data on computations to create new research products. And that's the third element that you will find EOSC that will be coming a result, again, in a common way so that it can be reusable. And all this, let's not forget, will have common ways to have learning objects, material that can be used to teach, to learn, and then connect education to research and eventually to innovation for the knowledge for the triangle of knowledge. These are the four pillars of the work. And all of them are coming together under four main directions that EOSC Future is working on: common authentication authorization, common monitoring, interoperability among all of them, and intelligence in order to help the user to move on. Eos Portal is the path towards this vision that I presented in my first slide. It's the means, not the end. By no means, if we'd all deliver the portal, we wouldn't have delivered anything. It's the means, not the end. It provides common ways and common approach to get to where you need. And it will be the EOS portal, but we do understand, and it won't be the only portal. There is nothing one unique in any walk of life, and not even here. And if you want a sneak preview, you'll have, this is how it will look like: have access to more than 300 services currently, access to millions of research products that are spread, centralized, distributed, and so on. And there will be a virtuous circle that from one, you'll be using the services to create research products, and then you research products with services to create more. Co-design by providers and users. This is very crucial in the presence of the ESFRI research infrastructures, and the infrastructures in the same project are critical. The ESFRI research infrastructures, they provide requirements, they build together with others, part of EOSC, and they offer quality data. And the word quality is a key there. And of course, they are the ones who have the face to the users. But ESFRI research infrastructure are not the only one. These are a very big part in general. Infrastructures are for lots of users, but there are many other users, many researchers, the long tail that EOSC will have to and will offer services to. And also not forget the commercial part, data space contributions that will be coming, that will be bringing data and services that will be very useful to EOSC. And of course, EOSC will be useful to them. So there's a virtual interaction there as well. The future of EOSC, all in all, is in the hands of EOSC Future. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yanis, especially for your ability to summarize such a huge amount of information in such a short time. I think it was very clear, and I think this is really fitting well with the two next presentations. And actually, I want to pass the floor then to the next speaker, Sarah Jones from Géant, and Sarah is also one of the directors of the EOSC Association, and she will tell us the current state of EOSC implementation from the user perspective and how we are reaching that vision. Sarah, please.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sarah. So yeah, thank you also to Yanis for that introduction to EOS Future, because it gives you all a sense of what the project's working on. And what I'll do is also explain a little bit about the project and then focus specifically on the user perspective. So EOS Future is developing the EOS platform and pursuing this system of systems approach. And that's meaning that we're bringing together all of the different services and data that you need to be able to access data from different research communities, compose those together, run your different workflows, and integrate the data and the services. And as Yanis mentioned, the Eos Portal is really a means to an end. This is something that we're building on, but it's not the only view into the Eos platform going forward. But currently, this is the primary resource for navigating the EOSC. And when you go to the portal website, you'll also get a virtual tour for new users to explain the different functionality and how you can access the different services and resources. Within that EOS portal, the catalog and the marketplace is the way that you're able to discover and access those different resources. So as we saw in the demo earlier, the EGI lab notebooks that came up, this is how you would actually access those and place an order for the different resources that you need to do your work. In terms of accessing EOS, AAI was mentioned before. I don't want to dwell on an acronym, but there are multiple ways to log in to EOS. You can use your different existing institutional credentials. It's linked to EduGain, so many institutions throughout the world can come and use their existing login. There are also many social kind of network accounts that you can use, like Google or ORCID to log in, and also the different infrastructure, the provision they have, so the OpenAir login or EGI check-in. And within the EOS Future project, we're also looking to authenticate with the different research clusters. As Yanis mentioned, this project brings together the e-infrastructures and the research infrastructures for the first time. And all of these different clusters have compatible login mechanisms, and they're being brought together under an AAI federation for EOSC, so that you can use your existing cluster login as well to access all of the different resources through EOSC. And this is part of that approach of kind of federating the different resources and services from each of the infrastructures. When you're within the portal interface currently, there's lots of different ways you can navigate resources to find things that are relevant to you. You can search by scientific domain, so you can search for your different subject area and be pointed to relevant resources. Or if you know you're looking, for example, for access to physical infrastructure, some storage or compute, or you want to get different processing or analysis tools, you can also search in that way. And there's obviously free text search as well. So looking at an example here, if you're searching for storage resources, you see various resources come up. There's quite a lot of resources already within the portal platform. And you can then kind of compare the different options you have for the services that you need. So you can see which organizations are providing these, whether they're for a particular scientific domain or a particular category of user. And then based on that, as was mentioned in the demo earlier, you can place orders for resources so that you're provided with the services that you need. And you can link these to different projects that you're running, and you can have multiple resources ordered over time. One of the things I wanted to flag is a series of projects that's been funded that are providing access to free storage and compute and support resources. Some of these focus on a particular subject area. So C-Scale and Reliance, for example, are working with Copernicus data, different Earth observation technologies like data cubes that were mentioned earlier. And they're providing a number of different services, storage services, access to cloud computing or HPC. And also DICE and EGI ACE are similarly providing kind of workspaces for you to bring together your data and your compute, so you can run your different analysis, or data repository services, or services to assign persistent identifiers to improve the discoverability of your data. And OpenAIRE is also providing open science kind of support. So support with data management plans if you're needing to draft one of those, or support with open science metrics so you can start to track the uptake of your resources. In terms of finding research data within EOSC, at the moment, there's work going on to provide a kind of cross search across different catalogues, but currently it's really looking at the community repositories and the catalogues they have. So the likes of CESDA or the COVID-19 portal, or we heard earlier that data had been found within OpenAIRE Explore and then linked into EOSC. But these different resources are being aggregated together in that system of systems approach. And we're using OpenAIRE Provide as a tool to onboard the different research product catalogues so that we can index the different data and software and publications that are made available. And these OpenAIRE Provide guidelines have already been adopted by over 2,000 different sources and various different platforms, so repository platforms like Dataverse and DSpace. So they're quite well validated. But we're also doing work within EOSC Future to check those with the different research clusters and making sure that they align with the community metadata standards. And an initial pilot was done with bioschemas, and more is planned in that area, so we can make sure that we're able to pull in the different data resources from different research communities. So this is an example of what the kind of cross-search catalogue will look like, how you can see the data index from various different sources. And as more community catalogues are integrated into EOS, there'll be greater search and discovery functionality provided. And one thing I want to flag on this, which Yanis also mentioned, is the idea of recommendations. So EOSC Future is using AI techniques to make different recommendations to users. So it will point you to relevant projects or data or publications or other resources you can use, and also potential collaborators so you can build your research network. And those recommendations will be based on your profile within the platform. So look at the kind of searches you've done, your viewing history, or what orders have been placed. And it will also look at the general popularity of different data and services, particularly with other users who have a similar research background or interests as you. And this is an example that came from John Shepherd of how this user panel will look and how that will display the different resources and recommendations to you, as well as indexing all of your existing projects and orders and the different resources you have available. And just to pick up on this user angle, within EOSC Future, we're doing a lot of engagement with research communities. There's already been some work to develop user personas to guide the development of the platform and the interface that's provided. And in the coming months, there's going to be a series of usability tests with a subset of users from the user group that we set up within EOSC Future to check that, the way things are presented, enables the researchers to complete their task. It's easy to navigate. It's actually a user-friendly interface to use, and it's something that people can trust. So that will be work that goes on to kind of validate how the developments are going. So in terms of the user perspective on EOSC Future, it's very much an evolution. Currently, researchers are able to access a rich set of resources through the portal, and that already incorporates some regional and thematic ones. And as I mentioned, you're also able to request various compute and storage services through those ESFRI EOSC 7 projects. And as we go on, this will be enhanced so that you're able to access and request access to resources from multiple locations, and that you're able to get access to the full spectrum of resources as we aggregate more into the EOSC platform and provide more the tailored recommendations and the ability to interoperate across those different services and data sets. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much, and I'll pick up on any questions in the chat.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Indeed, there are some questions in the chat. I think that your presentation well complemented Yanni's introduction, and you gave us some examples of concrete services or resources or functionalities that are already there or that will be coming up in the next months. And this is very useful. You also remarked this concept of the systems of systems, and we understood already from all this presentation that research infrastructures and the clusters are an essential part of it. And this leads me to the next presenter, Ari Azmi from University of Helsinki and the ESFRI Science Cluster, so the environmental cluster, that will tell us more about the EOSC Science Cluster's perspective. Ari, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope that I can get this one to show. At least my camera doesn't seem to work again, but let's see if something happens. Sorry?
We can see your presentation.
You can see. I cannot. Now I can see. I can see. I didn't see it myself. Okay, so you see this now?
Sorry, yes, but it's not in presentation mode. I think.
Okay, so it's the wrong.
You can swap displays if you want. You can click on swap displays. On top
yeah, if I would see something, just a second.
Excellent. It works now.
To do something. Okay, just a second. Now I lost it. Okay, I don't know what you see right now, but I will try now again. Just a second. How about now?
Yes, perfect.
No, okay, that's excellent. So I'm talking now about the cluster contributions to EOSC, which is a bit interesting title in itself. And as mentioned, I'm talking from the ESFRI Science Cluster perspective, with some contributions from the other science clusters as well. But this is mostly actually my own views here. So science clusters, for those ones who don't know, these are basically this kind of joint ESFRI infrastructure activities. So European big infrastructures working together. And there has been now 5 different projects funded by the Commission on this aspect. And of course, some of these clusters already existed before. What is also interesting here on the slide, on the picture on the right, you can see that these clusters typically have a lot of infrastructures involved, but it's not just the infrastructures there. These ends in the bottom are national nodes, so they have a lot of national activities in the member states. And the scientists are typically directly connected to the infrastructures, or in some cases also to the national nodes to use these services. One other thing, though, to remember is that these are projects, and so they are ending. Some of them are ending right now, and some of them are ending within a year or so. So the continuation of some of the activities is still unclear. So just very briefly, I will not go through here. You can see that in reality, all of these clusters include a lot of different kind of infrastructures and different infrastructures in different stages of development, and infrastructures providing completely different kind of services. A lot of them are data oriented, but not at all of them. And that also, this kind of heterogeneity also creates some aspects of how the different clusters have approached EOSC and also this open science in general. So just briefly, I mean, I just want to show you some of the aspects, what the clusters have been doing and how we see that benefits the user now and in the future, and also how the clusters help to connect the EOSC and the RIs together. So first of all, I think this is very important for the infrastructures themselves, is that if you look at now this blue infrastructure on the right, you can see this kind of traditional service where it provides services directly to their own domain specialists. What the clusters have been doing has been a lot of harmonization activities, harmonization of policies, harmonization of technologies, metadata and access. And that's actually even connected to some of the questions where they are like, what kind of things we should be doing if we are building a new infrastructure. Some of these aspects have been considered here in the science clusters for specific fields of science. And that way, then the RI with these orange arrows here can start to provide also services, usually more to the other RI or monitor the other RIs or the users of those other RIs in their own cluster, but also do, let's say, more interdisciplinary uses or really data science oriented users, which come from completely outside of the infrastructure typical users. And of course, these kind of activities are usually more connected to discovery and access, but there's also, of course, a strong interoperability feature here as well. But in reality, really, this activity also usually is connected more to the other fields of science within the cluster. So there is, of course, some aspects, and I will come back to that, for truly interdisciplinary use as well. So this is definitely a benefit for both the infrastructures and the infrastructure users who can then use things across these kind of traditional boundaries. Second thing, what the clusters, I think, has been very important in especially in reflection to EOSC, and not so much necessarily to the users directly, is that the science clusters have been helping the infrastructures to connect to EOSC and use their core services or other services provided by EOSC, but also on the other direction, driving some of these generic services provided by infrastructures to others through this kind of EOSC connectivity. And there is this really, it's a much more cost-effective way of doing this. The infrastructure's main business is always to serve the traditional user groups. And there, I mean, there's a huge amount of cost in time and money for connectivity to outside services, and you might have to change things, how you traditionally have done things. And they're doing it together has been extremely effective way of doing that one. And this reduces the migration risks and costs for infrastructures. And I think that's a very important from the infrastructure point of view. It also means in some cases that people who have always been traditionally using the common research infrastructure might become, without them ever realizing it, actually EOSC user, because the traditional service has changed something in their own internal systems, which might not be completely transparent or visible even for the user communities. And then the last one, which is actually a thing which not all the clusters have been extremely active on, but I think this is more from the perspective of my own cluster from ESFRI side. What we have been trying to build is not only this kind of top-down thing where the infrastructures build new services and people come to use them or share existing services through EOSC, but also trying to find new ways of engaging with researchers in this way, that providing this kind of cluster level way of accessing the services of infrastructures, but also providing platforms for development, and especially this kind of repositories of knowledge and existing solutions and use cases, which help then this kind of to empower the user base and the researchers to really create this kind of workflows and other ways of creating user-created services, which then other scientists can use. And I really enjoyed the presentations today by Anne and Petr on these kind of aspects of scripts and notebooks. And this is exactly the approach. What we are trying to do here is that we will try to document our use cases using this kind of existing scripts. And also then the idea would be then to have this kind of repositories shared also by user-created scripts in the future. So as an example of this activity, I will not go detailedly through this idea. We are building now a prototype in the ESFRI, which is exactly based on this kind of way of combining all this knowledge and catalog of services into this kind of hub interface, where they also have a Jupyter Notebook environment where this kind of workflows can be shared and clearly demonstrated to the users how they can build their own scripts on the same way. Another thing about these use cases, what I want to present here is what we are now building in the EOSC Future project, which was mentioned earlier. is this kind of interdisciplinary use cases between the clusters. So these are truly interdisciplinary use cases. And also here, it's very important to do them in a way that they can be replicated by users and they can be learned from, because even though they are scientifically interesting, I think that the main benefit out of these use cases really is on documentation, how you can truly create things across completely different fields of science, like social sciences and environmental sciences. And this slide here this is actually my second to last slide. This is more of how I sometimes would like to see the EOSC and the clusters and RIs in general. I think a lot of EOS core services, and it's a lot of capacity there, but they are base services. And from the scientist point of view, not so many scientists might want to use them directly. The clusters, instead, they are kind of transforming these EOS core services into services which can be maybe used by some researchers, but more importantly, it enables the infrastructures to use the core services in a way that the more and more their own users can use them. And what is the top here, what is exactly what I mentioned earlier, is that these scientists who are actually outside of existing ESFRI infrastructure user groups, they could be more engaged with the infrastructure services by this kind of way of sharing user-created targeted services. And that way, this kind of engagement would really let's say, from generic to very specific services for different kind of users. I think this is the pathway that we can get much more out of the EOS core services. So to conclude here, what does the EOS bring to the RI users? We have these cluster actions. There's relevant interdisciplinary data access and discovery. I think it's very important that there is some disciplinary approach as well, because more generic a thing comes, the harder it is to use by specialists usually, and it takes more time. And there is also this kind of understandable metadata across the domain, meaning that it's given in the language what the scientists are used to. From the infrastructure point of view, and also then to RIs or RI users, is that it creates this kind of efficient and interoperable services. There's less disruption on existing services and reduced cost for services, because the cluster action creates much more possibilities of sharing solutions. And then for users also, this brings really documentation and examples, virtual data platforms, and potential to create their own data services. So basically different kind of tools to create really interdisciplinary science in the future. So this was the presentation what I had. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to have them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ari, for further clarifying the role of the clusters in the EOSC ecosystem, and also to explain and going through some of the benefits for the research infrastructures users. I think there is one question for you in the Q&A, and we can go back to this later on. Now let's move to the three next presentations that are really on the use cases. And the first use case will be presented by Niklas Blomberg from Elixir, and the use case is about the COVID-19 platform and the Buy COVID project. Niklas, please.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So I hope you can hear me, and I hope you can see the slides.
Yes, all good.
Perfect, thank you. So thanks very much for the opportunity to present. So I lead Elixir Europe, and we're a distributed infrastructure to help scientists access and analyze life science data. And I'm not saying this only to promote Elixir, but actually I think that distributed nature of Elixir has really been a key enabler in the work that I'm going to talk about today. And most of the ESFRI research infrastructures are, of course, distributed and organized around these national centers. And I hope that part of my presentation, I think, is a way forward for ESFRI, how we can help to engage sort of the national communities and muster resources for large societal challenges. I also coordinate the EOSC Life project, and that's another part I hope to show in this short use case, is really how the services that we have been developing across the whole life science community in EOSC Life really has been underpinning and enabling a lot of the work that we've done over the last 2 years now in COVID. And so what I want to present is the work on the European COVID-19 data platform. Some of that has happened and is happening in the new Buy COVID project, but it's been a collaboration from the start of the pandemic between EMBL EBI and the large molecular archives at EBI, Elixir, and all our national partners, and including the national centers of the EOSC, so many of the members of the EOSC Association. And of course, we've had very, very good support from the European Commission here, so this wouldn't happen without the response that Kostas talked about this morning in the ERA versus Corona Action Plan. So open fair data is extensively reused for new research, and I thought I wanted to give a little bit of a flavor of the type of science that we aim to enable with the COVID-19 data platform. And I guess this slide in itself is an example of the research enabled by open science. So last night I was looking for an example, and actually within European PubMed Central, not only you have open access publications, but they're also cross-referenced to all the open resources that are used in these presentations. So the slide is simply the latest deposition in European PubMed Central of a paper that is actively reusing data from any of our molecular archives. But it turned actually out to be a really, really good example. Now, without going into details, I just wanted to show you sort of the logos of all the different type of resources that have gone in to the science published in this paper. So I guess there are a couple of takeaways from this. And so one is that it's of course impossible to do modern biology without these large public reference data sets. And they are used to sort of compare your data and the findings with the findings of other scientists, but they're also used indirectly. And so almost all the methods are using these archives both for development and for collaboration. And this paper is about mass spectrometry. And of course, it would be impossible to do mass spectrometry of proteins without having a large reference database of all the human proteins that where you can go and look up what is it that you're actually finding in your experiments. But the second aspect, and I think you see that from the logos, is that you actually need quite a lot of different types of data. So this is anywhere from genetic validation, the large genomic data resources. There are protein and expression resources. There are resources that talk about where do you find different genes in the body. But there are also resources such as gene ontology, which are really very, very carefully manually curated reference lookups on what is the function of different proteins in different tissues. And so you need a lot of different resources for a single paper and for a single piece of science. And I guess that's really the justification for the COVID-19 data portal, which is really a view onto all of this sort of richness of captured biology or cataloged biology, and with a specific lens of SARS-CoV-2, so the virus, and COVID-19 and the research on the disease and the response to the disease. And so that's really what we have tried to do in these projects, is to tie together and connect and link a very sort of rich tapestry of different data types and present that in a way that makes it easier for scientists to work with these data resources. And so just a few thoughts from this work that I thought could be interesting for the discussion today. So the first, we have heard and talked about identifiers, and I think this is a really good example. So the slide is actually a little bit old, but as of yesterday, there's just over 2.6 million sequences deposited in these open data archives. So if you ask, so what is then the original sequence, and how do you actually reference that original sequence for a paper or on an antibody, say? Well, then you can, of course, use these open archives to find an unambiguous identifier that is freely and openly referenceable and can be incorporated into other computational systems. So it gives that sort of ability to unambiguously define what you're talking about. And it turns out that these data identifiers from the open archives really are a cornerstone of sort of not only research, but actually the modern bioeconomy. So if you look, and we've looked into this, these global open and unique identifiers, they are of course used to connect a lot of data, as in the COVID-19 data portal, but they're also used in, say, in many patents. They are used in software, they're used in data management systems, they're used in many places where you unambiguously need to reference biological entities, both in science, but actually also in companies and the products of many companies. And I think we saw a really nice example earlier today with in the talk from Zoe and the small app. And if you looked at that, it seemed to me that is reusing a lot of open data and is packaging that in a clever way that provides added values to customers. And that turns out to actually be quite common way of using the open data and generate sort of innovation in small companies. And we've, within Elixir, we've put forward a report on this. The slides will be available, so I encourage you to look at that. So that's one aspect of what we've done, is this connection across molecular databases and the ability to reference the data within papers and research. But the second part of what we've done is really about mobilizing data and bringing out data from our national partners. And so we have worked with centers across Europe and actually beyond Europe to start up a lot of national COVID-19 data portals. And again, this has been vastly enabled by open science. So the team in Sweden, they early turned in their work into an open source web application, and that has then been cloned by groups in many, many other countries. But the importance of this and the work we've done with these national groups is really about finding the connections to the laboratories and to the centers within a country that is actually doing large-scale data generation, and make sure that this is mobilized and brokered into the reference databases where it can be easily found by the other researchers. And of course, in biology, not everything can be completely open. We are working with a lot of human genomes, and so they can be reused for research, but you need to have a little bit of control around how is using them and making sure that you provide and keep the trust and the privacy of the people who have made their genomes available for scientific research. And so we have worked with projects such as the Federated EGA and the 1 Million Genome Project. And again, this would only happen and is only possible by working with the national centers. So the example here is Finland, which is coordinating the data from a lot of different hospitals, labs, biobanks, or individual scientists who are submitting into a central Finnish node, and is then brokering the metadata onto a European system where it can be found and reused by other scientists. So in trying to summarize this, if we look at the work that we've done in the COVID-19 portal, it really has followed the sort of mobilized data, connected data, standardized the data so it can be analyze together and then expose that for other scientists to analyze. And this would only be possible thanks to a lot of the services that we've developed in the EOSC Life project and other projects. So they are the EOSC services here are really served as a foundational layer for the much more applied work we've done in the COVID-19 data portal. So I guess that's a real takeaway, is these services, they are now a foundation where we rapidly can mount a response to important challenges. And so then trying to summarize this up and with a few learnings, I hope I've convinced you or given you a flavor about how research data can both have scientific value and larger societal value in the sort of bioeconomy. I hope I've shown how this sort of distributed connected infrastructure really is critical for a working federated European landscape. I think this mobilize, connect, standardize, expose, and analyze paradigm is really powerful when it comes to sort of making use of data and mount a response. But there are some really important takeaways here, and that's, for instance, that the entry points for users become very important. And so we need to think about, for instance, about workflows as a first-class citizen in the system, not something that you bolt on later. And then I think Ari said the two last points really well in his talk. Within ESFRI and the research infrastructures, we of course have large established user communities with the production services that have been running for a long time. And actually through the EOSC process, the cluster projects and other, we've been able to link this up. And we see this now in ByCovid, where we're also working with, say, the social science research infrastructures within SHOC to link biological data and social science data. But the other part of this is that we have some established solutions for domain-specific needs. So I talked about the federated EGA for human genomes and the necessary access control for human data, but that could go into other direction on compliance and compliance with international agreements such as access and benefit sharing. And of course, EOSC need to build on these established domain solutions to really support interdisciplinary research. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions in the chat. So thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Niklas, for the inspiring presentation. I think that the COVID-19 platform is really the flagship use case at the moment for EOSC and the research infrastructures. And thanks also for introducing the topic of the national centers as a key element for EOSC, because now we have a presentation from Eleni Toli from Athena Research Center explaining the EOSC added value from a regional perspective. Eleni, you can share your presentation. I don't see Eleni in the panel.
She's not in the panel.
So shall we move to the next presentation while we sort out?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, so then, I mean, let's keep on all the regional aspects for a while, and let's move to another thematic use case. And the presenter is Karl Presser from Premotech and the FNS Cloud, which is one of the thematic cloud focusing on food nutrition security. Karl, please, the floor is yours. We can see your presentation.
Thank you, Sarah. Perfect. Can you also hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. And yeah, thanks also for giving me the chance to present our work here in this great workshop. I would like to present you how we're kind of benefited from EOSC and also from ESFRI. So on one side, we had the FNS Cloud, which is a thematic EOSC cloud about the food. So sometimes we also call it EOSC the Food Cloud, which is probably easier to catch, more catchy than the FNS, the acronym for it, which stands for Food Nutrition and security. And so the idea that we have a first generation of such a cloud, a thematic cloud, which is federating existing and emerging resources in the area of food and nutrition. And the ESFRI cloud is basically covering health, nutrition, and agri-food sciences. On the other hand, so this was the EOS cloud. On the other hand, we have a research infrastructure, so MetroFood RI, which is a distributed research infrastructure that promotes metrology in food and nutrition. So metrology is all the measurements that we're doing on the food and nutrition, and getting all this information, what's in the food, basically. And MetroFood entered the ESFRI roadmap in 2018 and is currently in the preparatory phase, to prepare for the ERIC status. And MetroFood covers a little bit more topics like the agri-food, food safety, of course, traceability, authenticity, so that the food that we know where's the food coming from, and of course also human health. And so our engagement in both projects or initiatives is was quite a lucky coincidence, because we're kind of brought together the EOSC and the ESFRI in here. And for both of them, we needed to build something like the electronic research infrastructure for the research infrastructure, and for the ESFRI cloud, it was more the electronic cloud, let's say. So also the electronic part therefore. So we started this journey more than 2 years ago, when also EOSC was coming up and start to develop. And yeah, the first part was there, okay, we had kind of an idea, we need something electronic, like an electronic cloud, but what is in there? So we were kind of scratching our heads, what is in there? Why is it in there? Who brings it in? How is it connected? And so we had kind of many questions at the beginning. And there we could, EOSC from one side and ESFRI from the other side brought in a lot of general concept first. So we could quite a lot of benefit over there. So this open science from EOSC, also including open methodology, open sources, open data, open access, open peer review, but also open educational resources. The FAIR principle we have heard several times. It's kind of clear. This is also a concept that came in and said, okay, make your data fair. And also from the EOSC side, we had kind of from ESFRI side, we also have there a lot of concepts, so that we're kind of to be open as possible and close as necessary. We should join the forces, building bridges between the research communities, and run everything sustainable, and also reduce fragmentation in there, right? And the community of practice or living labs or new terms or terms now kind of getting up to date for usage in daily research lives. So this was kind of first the conceptual framework that we understand, okay, where we're kind of working. Then our cloud was started to fill. So we had a lot of existing databases here with this blue icons symbolized, but also there were a lot of applications, online apps or desktop apps, which use some data, a lot of publications, and some of these resources are restricted in access. So I presented it with a lock so that we have kind of restriction there. The next point was then from EOSC, we kind of benefited seeing, okay, first of all, this cloud is huge. There is a lot of resources. So I focus here a little bit more on the software resources, while there is also hardware resources or data analysis services, much more also. So some other components that are available as resources. So first of all, we need to get an overview about it. And from EOSC, we saw there the EOSC Marketplace, which was not there at the beginning, it came later, but we catch the idea of the catalogs and say, okay, let's make first an inventory of what we had. Let's make an application out of it and provide it to the user for searching. So we had kind of a website, and on this website we had catalogs for data sets, apps, and other services which are available. Here, a short print screen that you can browse for data sets. You're searching for certain terms. And then you're having a result list with some information. We tried also a little bit this user engagement by let the user rate certain data sets, so how good it is. We started with a simple 5-star rating scheme, but we realized quickly this needs to be more tailored. So we need to be more aspects. So having certain aspects. So is it good for a certain purpose? Is it fit for another purpose? It must be a little bit more distinguished. So just 1 5-star rating is a little bit too simplified. And we're kind of think about how this data quality assessment or this quality assessment can be improved and needs more facets. If you open one of these examples, you see a lot of information. Who is the contact person of a certain data set or a database, and how can it be used, right? So here we're really always checking what EOSC was doing with the marketplace and used more or less the same attributes so that we're kind of easily can integrate with the EOSC marketplace. But we also went one step further, because at one step we could also decide, okay, why don't we merge? So the point was that the EOS marketplace was developed at the same time, and we went a little bit further and went very specific to food data. One very specific part is in food data. What we have quite common is there the food supply chain, where we go from the primary production over the food processing, over the packaging, the storage and distribution, until the final consumption. This is kind of a food supply chain, and we wanted also to visualize a little bit the available resources in the food area. So we had kind of one axis presenting the supply chain, on the other axis having kind of a certain freedom that you can select what categories should be shown there, and then the resulting table shows you available data sets in this area, and also shows you available gaps, basically, right? Basically gaps which where we have no data, where is nothing available, and maybe where the research can produce more to fill the gaps. So this is a concept. We're currently extending our catalogs with such graphical research, which is very much tailored on the food science area. The next step, when we had a lot of these tools up and running and then implemented, was this authentication and authorization infrastructure. We have seen it already. Sarah Jones, I think, showed the same screen here. We had a lot of contact with EGI, so from EOSC, to check, okay, how is their AI working? How should we implement it that we can federate with many of these things? And finally, we have now in the EOS cloud, but also in the research infrastructure, our AI, which is able to federate with any others. And this makes us a kind of, was very beneficial to learn from there and to see that we're now kind of able to federate. And so it basically doesn't matter where users are authenticated, they can enter also the resources that we provide. The next step was the data exchange. So once we have all these resources up and running, you want to exchange, right? All these resources, we have seen nice examples. We want to move a data set into an application, do something, export the result to the next one, which can be reused again, and so on and so on. With this communication, we were checking then also the EOSC available guidelines and best practice recommendations. And we went first step, we said, okay, we defined an extensive definition about the exchange format, so the entities, the attributes, and also the use thesauri, the control vocabulary, and also the API signatures. Here an example of the food entity that we defined exactly the fields, and we also for the thesauri we defined which one that we want to use. That we have it in the cloud, that we're using the same one. From this starting point, the next step is, of course, the ontology, which is then should be quite easy from this definition then, this format definition to derive an ontology for it. And also from EOSC and also from the RDA, we've kind of learned about the digital objects, which is kind of a nice idea that you have some executable code with your objects that you can send somewhere to do certain things. So this is also, I think, kind of an evolution that we follow up. We're staying at the first step at the moment. We have this implemented, and ontologies also, we're on the way to implement it in the EFRI cloud. The digital object is kind of the next step on our plan. Then more added values was a little bit also here I see kind of this virtual research environment. We have also seen some examples and we've also implemented some of them, which is kind of a nice idea there. The resource onboarding, we learned a lot from the EOS community. The community building and the training is also something we're collaborating with EOSC, which helps us a lot of there. And also this service provision and administration is something that we see from others and learn, have it there. For us, it's also interesting because the research community, we're building these two clouds with the research community, and there is always this how to make incentive, right? Incentives for the users to publish their data, to motivate them, because we have seen the reasons why people don't publish the data. We also kind of have seen that not only the researchers, but also policymaker, consumers, in our case, also food producers, so the food producing industry, but also ICT companies are important. So we can also focus with them. And on the right side, you see a web app. So basically we have developed, which also is optimized for running on the mobiles, on mobile devices, where we're showing some contamination in food. And so this is for the end consumer, that he has a kind of help when being in the supermarket and wants to check contamination on a food. So we can also show. So quite similar to the presentation from Zoe, but here a little bit only on the foods and only on the current contamination data. That's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Carla. I really like your presentation, especially how you are approaching EOSC as a sort of, probably before a little bit outsider, how you approach that. And I think this also answered one of the questions that there was before in the chat about how new research infrastructures can approach EOSC. I think you provided a very good example on how to interact with EOSC. I've been told that Eleni is now in the meeting, so I would like to move to the last speaker of the session, Eleni Toli from Athena Research Center, that will tell us more about the EOSC added value from a regional project perspective. Eleni, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry for this mix-up. It was a problem with the connection links, and I did not do this in purpose, Carl, to take your last place so that I can close this slot. So I would like to share with you now my presentation. Okay, can you see my presentation in full mode, in presentation mode?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So Aris previously presented the view from the cluster perspective. Now I will present the view from the regional perspective, the view of the NIFOS Europe project, which is one of the projects that are the ESFRI EOSC 5B projects, and how we work to provide concrete support both for the users in our region, but also for the research ecosystems and the EOSC ecosystem. So we believe that our region.
I cannot see your presentation anymore. I don't know if
okay.
Probably you have some connection.
Yes, we have a huge snowstorm in Athens, and currently in my area it's again snowing, so I have connection problems today. Can you see now?
Not yet. Maybe if you switch off your video and try again with the presentation.
I'm sharing again my screen.
No, we cannot see it. Oh, now it's coming. Yes, if you put it in full screen.
Okay.
Yes, now it's there. Thanks.
Okay. I was about to say that about the particular characteristics of our area. We feel that our area is unique. I'm pretty sure that many people in this meeting and many Europeans feel the same. However, what I wanted to say with this is that we have to work with this diversity in terms of open science policies and approaches and maturity, which somehow poses some difficulties for us also in how to structure and organize the research collaboration in our area. On the other hand, there are also some strengths and some things we can build upon, and this is certainly the fact that NIFOS Europe project is a de facto regional collaboration for EOSC, and it is actually a project that works on a regional level in a very systematic way. And in parallel, we have this strong presence in the ESFRI ecosystem. Most of the countries that participate in NIFOS Europe are represented in several ESFRI research infrastructures, several domains, on several domains, and actually in only 3 countries there are currently no ESFRIs, and this maybe is something that makes this discussion even more important and also gives an additional idea on how we could structure and organize this ESFRI EOS collaboration from now on and also in our region. So in the very first year of our project, we did this landscaping survey. This was very interesting and helpful for us to understand what is the current situation, what is the frame in which we will run all our activities. And there clearly we saw that there are these different levels of open science maturity and open science approaches, also reflected in the related policies, research policies in each country. Same, we identified that the knowledge about EOSC, the familiarity with EOSC and FAIR was not that high in several categories of users, because we interviewed a large pool of users. And this was something that really made us draw actually our activities and how we structured our work and our work from now on. So these are, let's call them the headlines for our action, and they are very much a remedy to the situation we have seen through our landscaping survey. You see that we support communities on multiple levels. On the levels of on the line of adding value through policies and governance and increase in inclusion. The most prominent, of course, initiative, the most prominent activity here are our national open science cloud initiatives. We provide training on EOSC and FAIR, and we develop tools related to EOSC, to FAIR, EOSC, and open research data management, and also provide concrete technical support for onboarding. So this is an overview of several activities, a clustered overview. As I mentioned, we have developed tools that help the various aspects. They help the trustworthiness of repositories. They help the publishing in fair manner of resources that are even unlicensed resources, and they help the licensing process. And we also support prospective EOSC providers to check whether they comply with legal and EOSC principles or not. We provide training. We apply all these principles also during our onboarding process, and we provide concrete support for onboarding. And of course, we have this community support activities. Zoe already, NOSKIs again, but also Zoe already mentioned the EOSC promoters and the excellent work they do in our region. And she actually provided also a very concrete example of how a concrete research community benefits from the EOSC services. I would like to provide 2 concrete examples of EOS, of NIFOS Europe services for user communities and researcher communities. The one is our recently updated NIFOS Europe catalog, through which you can browse and see resources that have been onboarded or are in the process of being so. And the second is, of course, the toolbox we have created for setting up a national open science cloud initiatives. It's something that we have put a lot of effort in it. We can see I believe it was in the previous workshop, in the findings of the previous EOSC workshop, where it was mentioned that the national building blocks of bringing together thematic and horizontal infrastructures and research performing organizations are in the core of what we would like to do and how we would like to contribute to EOSC. And this is pretty much what we do with our NOSCIs. We create living national open science ecosystem, really inclusive and with all open science actors in the countries. NIFOS Europe is a project that puts together two lines of representatives of two domains. On the one hand, there are the operators of services and research for research and technology. And on the other hand, there are the open science communities and infrastructures. Both communities, let's call them communities for the economy of time, have a very long track record in collaboration, in regional collaboration. But it's really the first time that these two communities came together and collaborate through our project. We believe this is something that is a good collaboration scheme and model, also as part of our discussion here, as part of the ESFRI and EOS discussion. And actually, I will not go through the list of this of recommendations. Many of them echo what have been included also in previous presentations in the findings or take-up slides. I would like to say that indeed ESFRIs can act as mediators between users and EOS, as Kostas also mentioned in his presentation in the beginning. And there are a lot of collaboration areas, common collaboration areas between ESFRI and EOS. We see this also in our project on a daily basis, in the sense that we are working along the very same lines that Miriam mentioned in her presentation, and we are very happy about this. And the regional projects could offer actually a vehicle for strengthening even more this collaboration between EOSC and ESFRI, something that also Ute mentioned in her closing slides. So how and why this is possible, for example, and this is how I want to close this presentation. NIFOS Europe is onboarding non-ESFRI resources by definition, by description of action. So this is actually a contribution, our contribution on how we can achieve inclusion by bringing together, although we don't onboard ESFRI resources, we do collaborate, and we are present, our partners are present in a number of ESFRI research infrastructures. And this is something that really helps the co-development and can really strive this collaboration process further. And we believe this is something that is something that we have clearly seen in our project. To act complementary and to work towards this common resilient research ecosystem. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eleni, for having given to us a different perspective to EOSC. So we are running a little bit out of time because we are already in the time reserved to the coffee break, but I've seen that almost all the questions have been answered by the speakers, so thank you very much for that. Probably I just want to pick one question and a very quick comment. And the question that I would like to ask especially to Niklas probably and Ari, is the question about how can the sustainability of the science clusters be supported beyond the current ongoing projects and in parallel with EOSC developments. Any of you wants to give a quick comment on this question?
It's a very good question. Of course, some of the clusters I do know that they have their own sustainability based on either some sort of memorandum of understandings or some sort of other entities. But especially in the environmental sector, we don't have yet a complete answer to this one. And maybe Niklas can comment from the biomedical side.
It is very challenging, and I think it's challenging in many levels. I mean, we're building in EOSC, we're building a very federated infrastructure, right? And so a lot of the investments need to come from national sources around these national centers. And we need, I think, collectively within EOSC and within ESFRI to find ways of expressing the value of that European connectivity to the national centers, so that can be built into national roadmaps. And at the same time, there are things that are very difficult with national budgets, and that's of course the international collaboration and the international user access. And I think that's where we need to work, maybe with the EOSC Association, with funders, to find models so we can preserve those elements, because I think they are very important for the function of the ecosystem.
Thank you very much for your comments. And also I just want to highlight that it seems that the audience appreciated the fact that EOSC is enabling the capability for users to create specific services, as Ari and others, Carl have presented. So that's really good. I would like to thank once again all the speakers of the session, and I hand it over to you, Miriam. And sorry for the slight delay.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for chairing this session so excellently. We are a little bit late, going into coffee break now, and I think we should reconvene here at 14:35. Further, I think this was a great session, and I'm very impressed by the use cases that were shown, and also by the future that was explained to us by Yannis, and it looks very bright. So see you again at 14:35, and reconvene to the last session of today. See you in a little.